The roads are empty, the promos are high, and the dark holds things that food apps were never meant to track. This is Brandon's story. It was around 1:30 a.m. on a freezing Tuesday night in Columbus, Ohio, when Brandon decided to call it a night. His eyes were burning from the glow of his phone. His gas tank was sitting at just under a quarter full. He pulled over into an empty gas station lot, ready to tap, go offline, and climb into bed. But right as his thumb hovered over the screen, his phone vibrated violently. A loud, sharp chime echoed through the quiet cabin of his car. A new incoming order request. He planned to decline it. But when he looked at the payout, his jaw dropped. $28. Distance, 3.0 miles. In the delivery world, a payout that high for such a short trip is incredibly rare. Usually, it means the order has been repeatedly rejected, causing the app's algorithm to increase the price to force someone to take it. Brandon did not hesitate. He tapped, accept. The app directed him to a place called Midnight Cravings Company. But as he followed the blue navigation line, the familiar neon signs of fast food rows began to fade away. The GPS guided his car deep into an industrial park on the outermost edge of the city limits. This was not an area with restaurants. It was a grid of massive, windowless concrete warehouses. At this hour, the entire zone was completely dead. Not a single car was in any of the parking lots. The streetlights were spaced incredibly far apart, leaving massive stretches of the road in pitch-black darkness. Finally, the GPS voice spoke into the quiet car.
You have arrived at your destination.
The order. Brandon pulled his sedan into a vast, cracked asphalt lot, facing a sprawling gray warehouse. The building looked completely abandoned. There were no signs, no logos, and no visible lights coming from inside. He sat in his car for a moment, the engine idling, feeling a sudden spike of anxiety in his chest. His instincts were telling him that something was wrong. But he told myself that ghost kitchens always look sketchy from the outside. They are designed for utility, not aesthetics. Just as he was debating whether to cancel the order and drive away, he noticed a faint, flickering light near the far back corner of the building. He slowly drove around the side of the warehouse and found a single, heavy, industrial metal door. Above it, a single bulb hung from a wire, casting a harsh yellow glow. Taped to the rusted metal was a sheet of paper. Written in crude, black, permanent marker were the words, "Delivery drivers. Walk straight in. The pickup counter is at the end of the hall." Brandon sighed, trying to rationalize the situation, wanting that $28 payout. He made a choice that he would regret for the rest of his life. He left his keys in the ignition with the engine running to keep the heater blowing, grabbed his phone, and stepped out into the freezing night air. He walked up to the heavy door and pushed it open. It was completely unlocked, opening with a loud, echoing, metallic groan. The moment his second foot cleared the frame, the heavy door swung shut behind him with a violent, metallic thud. The sound was so sudden that he jumped. He turned around and noticed there was no handle on the inside, just a standard emergency push bar. He turned back around and looked down the narrow concrete hallway. It stretched straight ahead for about 50 feet before opening up into a larger room. The air inside did not smell like food. There was no scent of grease, burgers, or fries. Instead, it smelled strongly of industrial bleach and stagnant water. as if someone had spent hours scrubbing the floors to wash away something terrible. He began to walk slowly, his sneakers squeaking loudly against the polished concrete floor. The silence inside the building was absolute. There was no hum of commercial refrigerators, no clattering of pans, and no voices of kitchen staff. The only sound was the high-pitched, faint buzzing of the cheap fluorescent lights overhead. He reached the end of the hall and stepped into the main room. It was arranged to look like a makeshift kitchen setup, but it felt entirely wrong. Stainless steel tables were lined up under the harsh lights, and commercial ovens stood against the wall. But everything was spotlessly clean. Too clean. There was not a single scrap of food, wrapper, or cooking utensil anywhere. But right in the dead center of the main stainless steel counter, sitting completely alone under a bright light fixture, was a single standard brown paper delivery bag. "Hello," Brandon called out, his voice shaken slightly. "Is anyone here? I am here for the pickup." No one answered. His voice just bounced off the high concrete ceilings, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. He took a hesitant step forward, walked up to the counter, and reached out to grab the paper handles of the bag. As he did, his eyes naturally drifted down to the white receipt ticket stapled to the front. On a normal delivery, the receipt lists the items ordered, like burgers or drinks. But as he looked closer at this receipt, a cold wave of pure terror washed over him. There were no food items listed. Taped to the front of the bag was a single sheet of paper, and printed on it, in bold black capital letters over and over again from the top of the page to the bottom, was his own name. Brandon. 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 The lockfriend stared at the paper, his brain completely freezing up. This was not a real food delivery. The entire thing, from the high payout to the fictional restaurant name, was a trap designed specifically to lure him into this abandoned warehouse in the dead of night. His survival instincts fired all at once. He dropped the bag, spun around on his heel, and prepared to sprint back down the long concrete hallway toward the entrance door.
No! Let me out! Please! You have to open the door! Open up!
But before his feet could even move, a massive, violent sound tore through the silence of the warehouse. Clang. It was the distinct sound of a heavy, commercial magnetic lock engaging. The metal door at the far end of the hallway had just been remotely locked from the outside. Panic completely took over. Brandon sprinted down the narrow concrete tunnel and threw the entire weight of his body against the emergency metal push bar of the door. The bar depressed with a heavy click, but the door did not budge an inch. It was completely solid. He slammed his shoulder into the reinforced steel over and over again, screaming for help. But his voice was completely swallowed up by the thick concrete walls. He was completely sealed inside. As he stood there, gasping for air in the freezing hallway, his phone vibrated violently in his hand. It was not a notification from the delivery app. It was a direct text message from an unknown, blocked number. With trembling fingers, he unlocked his screen and read the message. "Thanks for coming inside, Brandon. The security cameras look great from down here. You should smile more." Brandon felt the blood drain completely from his face. He slowly turned his head away from the door and looked up at the ceiling. There, tucked high up in the dark corner, was a small, modern security camera, A tiny, solid red recording light was glowing steadily in the dark. As he stared at it in horror, he heard a faint, mechanical whirring sound right before his eyes. The camera lens slowly, smoothly panned downward, adjusting its angle until it was pointed directly at his face. Whoever was on the other end of that digital feed was watching him in real time, enjoying his panic. A wave of adrenaline crashed through his body. He knew he could not stay standing in that narrow hallway like a cornered animal. He turned and ran back into the large makeshift kitchen room, desperately looking for a weapon or another way out. But the counters were completely stripped bare. There was absolutely nothing he could use to defend himself. Suddenly, another sound echoed from the dark, deep recesses of the warehouse, far beyond the illuminated kitchen area. It was the sound of a heavy door opening in the shadows, followed by the slow, deliberate sound of footsteps. Thud, thud, thud. The footsteps were heavy, unhurried, and rhythmic, like leather boots walking across old concrete. Whoever it was, they were walking with absolute confidence, knowing that he had nowhere to run. Brandon looked up at the ceiling rafters, and the other security cameras in the main room were actively moving, their lenses whirring silently as they tracked his frantic movements. Out in the pitch-black darkness of the unlit warehouse floor, he could see a faint, shifting movement, a dark silhouette slowly moving through the empty storage racks, heading directly toward the light of the kitchen. He knew he had only seconds to act. He turned his back to the approaching sound and frantically scanned the back wall. Behind a stacked pile of old plastic milk crates, he spotted something he had missed before. It was a small, narrow utility door, painted a faded green, equipped with a simple mechanical metal push bar. He did not hesitate. He scrambled across the floor, reached the green door, and threw the entire weight of his torso against the bar. He closed his eyes, expecting it to be locked, expecting to slam into solid iron. Instead, with a loud, piercing, rusted metal shriek, the utility door popped open. The escape. Brandon tumbled forward through the opening, falling hard onto a pile of sharp, freezing gravel outside. The impact knocked the wind out of his lungs, but he scrambled to his feet, ignoring the pain. He found himself in a narrow, unlit alleyway at the very back of the warehouse. He ran as fast as his legs could carry him, sprinting around the dark corner of the building and bursting into the front parking lot. His sedan was sitting exactly where he had left it, the engine still idling with a low, comforting hum, and the headlights slicing through the darkness. He sprinted to the driver's side door, ripped it open, threw himself into the seat, and violently slammed the car into reverse. He stomped on the gas pedal. The tires spun wildly on the wet asphalt, letting out a loud shriek before gaining traction, and the car launched backward out of the parking space. He spun the wheel around, shifted into drive, and floored the accelerator, tearing out of the parking lot. As his car flew past the rusted main gates of the industrial park and onto the public road, he glanced up at his rearview mirror to make sure no one was following him. What he saw in that mirror is an image that will remain burned into his mind for the rest of his life. Standing directly under the single, flickering bulb of the warehouse door was a figure. The person was incredibly tall, dressed entirely in black, and wearing a thick, blank, white plastic mask over their face. A mask with no eyes, nose, or mouth features. Just a smooth, white surface. In their left hand, the figure was holding a large, glowing tablet screen, and the pale blue light reflected off the surface of the blank mask. They didn't chase after him. They just stood there, perfectly still under the flickering yellow light, calmly watching his car disappear into the safety of the night. The aftermath. Brandon drove like a madman until he saw the bright neon signs of a fully active police precinct downtown. He practically crashed his car into the visitor parking lot, ran inside the lobby, and collapsed at the front desk, sobbing and frantically trying to explain what had just happened to a deeply confused desk sergeant. The officers took his statement seriously, and within 30 minutes, 2 patrol cars were dispatched back to the industrial park to investigate. An hour later, the sergeant walked back into the break room to give him an update. But what he said only made the horror deeper.
Dispatch, we are entering the structure now.
Copy that, Unit 4. Area should be completely vacant.
Understood. Proceeding with caution.
Support is on standby.
When the officers entered the building, the interior was completely empty. The stainless steel preparation tables, the commercial ovens, the light fixtures hanging from chains, everything was completely gone. Stripped bare down to the original concrete floors. There were no wires running along the ceiling, and most terrifyingly, there were no security cameras mounted in the corners. The brackets had been cleanly unscrewed from the walls. The only thing left in the entire sprawling room was that single brown paper delivery bag, sitting right in the center of the floor where Brandon had dropped it. Inside, the police found no food. There was only a small, cheap digital tracking tile, a Bluetooth locator tag, and a handwritten note that read, "Better luck next time, Brandon. We will see you at home." The police launched a full investigation, but they found that the warehouse had been vacant for over 8 months. The corporate owner had no record of any lease to a company named Midnight Cravings. And the delivery app company revealed that the account used to place the order had been created less than an hour before using a burner phone application and a fake prepaid credit card. The account was completely untraceable. The detectives explained a terrifying theory to Brandon. The predators had not chosen a random driver that night. They had been stalking him for weeks. They had observed him driving his usual delivery routes, noted his license plate, and created the fake order, waiting until his car entered the perimeter of the industrial park before launching the digital trap on the app, ensuring that the notification would land directly on his phone. Brandon never returned to the gig economy. The very next morning, he packed up all his belongings into a moving truck and moved back to his parents' house in a completely different city across the state. He sold his sedan and bought a completely different vehicle, terrified that the people in the white masks would recognize his car on the street. To this day, he does not know who those people were or how close he came to disappearing off the face of the earth. All he knows is that it serves as a chilling reminder for anyone working the night shift. Sometimes, when a deal seems too good to be true, you are not the one earning a paycheck. You are the bait.